Hello, Quesnel, and welcome to Q Today. I'm Mitch Vick.
And I'm Ron Campbell, and this is our show for November the 20th.
And coming up on today's show, from The Observer, our top story, Search and Rescue receives a $25,000 provincial grant, and local schools are addressing the bullying issue.
And also coming up on part 2 of the show is the second part of Bert deVink's series with Dave Brown.
Okay, here at Q Today we bring you the recent news provided by our partnership with the Caribou Quesnel Observer, combined with a little bit of our own commentary, right, Ron?
Yes.
Also, we bring you our own stories from the community. Do you want to promote something? Do you have a concern? Or are you especially proud of someone or something in our community? We want to know.
Because we feel that what's important to you is also important to us. Our field crews are out there and they want to talk to you. So email us at qtoday@qcatv.ca with your story and ask us to cover a story you know that the community and yourself would love to hear and see. Right, Mitch?
Right on. So moving on to news. Remember, we just give the highlights. If you want to get the whole story and all the details, you need to pick up your copy of The Observer. And now over to Ron for our first story.
Well, Mitch, the government is handing out money and we've got some.
All right.
The Minister of Community Sports and Cultural Development, Bill Bennett, was on hand last Tuesday at the Quesnel Search and Rescue to announce a $25,000 grant for the organization. He said that the Quesnel Search and Rescue provides the critical service of finding and assisting British Columbians in their community. Bennett went on to say that with this grant, the BC government is proud to support the work of the organization that is dedicated to the safety and well-being of British Columbians. The grant will help Quesnel Search and Rescue, which is run by volunteers, to attend more training as well as to help in purchasing equipment. The president of the Quesnel Search and Rescue, Robert Zimmerman, pointed out the facility doesn't currently have all the equipment necessary to run efficiently. And believe it or not, Mitch, they don't have a boat. With half of its research and rescues being in rivers, the facility has been relying on volunteers, and they've been renting boats from the volunteers, and the organization has been using them. This is not only great news for the search and rescue people, but it's great news for the community, Mitch.
So they didn't have a boat?
They didn't have a boat.
Wow. So this grant will hopefully address that? Is that the plan?
So. I hope so.
That's
I
great.
think that'll be the first thing that they'll get.
That's great. Into our second story. In School District number 28 News, Cynthia Bernier and Sue Ellen Miller wrote about how bullying is being addressed in our schools. Each year, every school has a plan to develop a social responsibility among students. These plans range from a simple to complex, based on students' ages and the needs of the school at any given time. Through lessons and presentations, students learn about bullying, how to recognize various forms of bullying, how to develop empathy, and how to take a stand against bullying from bystanders' perspective. There are a number of exceptional programs being used in schools to reduce and eliminate bullying. Some of these include, but are not limited to, Focus on Bullying, Bullying Beware, the Kindness Program, and Roots of Empathy. A district-wide bully survey was developed in partnership with the District Parent Advisory Council, or commonly known as DPAC, the results of which were shared with principals in order to better inform the school-level planning. DPAC also plans to bring in presenters to speak with parents about their roles in bullying prevention. There is also work being done at the provincial level to help districts work more closely with community partners to create a more holistic approach to address bullying. This is called ERACE, and that stands for Expect, Respect, and a Safe Education Strategy.
You know, Mitch, more and more we are letting other organizations try to cure problems that we have. Bullying can be cured if we start at the home. no matter what organizations come out, what plans that they have, if the child is not taught at home how to respect others and to respect himself, there is no way that they're going to stop bullying.
I agree with you 100%, but what do you do with kids who haven't been given some of those fundamentals at home? How does society deal with that? As
usual, we've always passed things on. We've passed on to the school district and to the teachers to raise our children. And that's wrong. We got to take that back. Look at all of the things we've eliminated from the school. We've eliminated O Canada. We've eliminated prayer. We've eliminated God Save the Queen. These were all things that we did in school to show that we respected country and others. It was strictly, it's in the Bible, and people quote it time and time again. Treat others as you yourself would like to be treated.
Definitely fundamentals that we wish children would come to school with, some of those fundamentals.
I do too.
It's just complex. It's a complex issue. What do you do with kids that didn't have that benefit? We have to do something, right?
Well, I know when I was going to school, if I didn't have enough food, they put me into an after-school program, and I was the only one there. So I don't think I'd want to be put into a special class to teach me how not to bully someone else.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Over to you to our next story there, Ron.
Oh, you mean to say I got to continue talking here?
We do, yes.
Anne Gallant always does excellent articles, and I say that because she does. This one is about have a pet, have a plan. And it stemmed from a very sad story about a couple and their pets. Recently, Fiona Efford of Crooked Lake Ranch got an urgent call to help rescue some animals from a couple who had been taken to the hospital. The couple had apparently been having a difficult time taking care of themselves, let alone their many pets. So with permission, Efford and a couple of Crooked Lake Ranch volunteers found temporary boarding arrangements for all of them except one cat, which is still missing. Willow Efford, also from Crooked Lake Ranch, said, "This isn't a unique situation, and I wish I could say that this was the worst I've seen, but it isn't." She went on to say that owners, for whatever reason, find themselves unable to care for animals, and this is something that people should read and talk about and make sure that they understand the need to have a plan if you have a pet. Willow also said that the owners were also neglected, and that's where neighbors, service people, and others who may notice things just aren't right should step in and drop by and check on these people. Fiona added, if someone is checking on the owners, then they're also witnessing any animal conditions. Crooked Lake Ranch is an animal rescue sanctuary that is operated by volunteers and depends on donations. They're always looking for foster homes, used towels and blankets, and of course the old standby, solid cash is always welcome. People can also donate on behalf of the Crooked Lake Ranch to any of the vet clinics in town. Mitch, I have a dog that has me and my wife well trained, and we wouldn't think of stepping out of this world without making sure he was looked after.
Fair enough.
You know, and that's all you have to do. Get a relative, get a neighbor, get someone that you can count on to look after that pet if you do have to go into hospital or something like that.
Yeah, it's important to have sort of some of those arrangements made.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I have a few local events coming up to tell you about here on QToday. First, we'll tell you about on November 24th, the North Star Baptist Church is hosting a musical fundraiser concert to support the Seniors Advocacy Service Office. A suggested donation of $10 and/or a bag of non-perishables to support good cheer is requested. The concert begins at 7 p.m. and again, that's this Saturday, the 24th of November. Also, the 2012 annual Rotary Auction is coming up on November 26th, 27th, and 28th. Watch for the auction flyer coming out in Friday's edition of The Observer. Twin Rivers Band is hosting a dance on November 30th at the Elks Hall. Tickets will be $10 and are available at Circle S Western Wear or from Colleen at 992-6290. The dance begins at 8 and there are no minors, please. And lastly, there is a Voice for Seniors meeting at the Legion on November 22nd at 2 p.m. Over to you, Ron.
Thanks, Mitch. Guess who showed up for the meeting last Thursday and there wasn't one? Yours truly.
Yours truly. You're just really early, Ron.
Really early. And I see that you can't go to the Twin Rivers Bend because there's no minors allowed.
Thank you. Yes, I can.
And in sports, Jackson Nicolette, who is a 13-year-old motocross rider, recently won the points championship for Northern BC and placed second in the points championship for all of BC. It was Nicolette's first season on an 85cc Kawasaki bike, and he spent a good part of the summer traveling all over the province for races. He said he wasn't that good at the beginning of the season, but the more he raced, the better he got. After his first win of the season here in Quesnel, and finding out he was 5th in the provincial standings, Nicolette kicked it into high gear, so to speak, and doubled his effort for the rest of the season. He finished the season sitting 40 points ahead of his nearest competitor. That's something else, to ride a bike with that many cc's and race it. Yeah. No, thank you. I'd have to be about 12, I think.
That's a big bike for a younger guy.
Yeah, it is.
Good for him.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And moving on into hockey news, the Kangaroos suffered a loss against the Williams Lake Stampeders. That's terrible. No. And that was, of course, on the Remembrance Day weekend. They dug themselves into a big hole in the first period, allowing the Stampeders to run all over them with 5 unanswered goals. That's a little out of character for them. The second saw the Roos come back to within 2, but they couldn't pull out the win, and they ended up losing 7-4. In the Forestry League hockey, Bert Communications squeaked out a 2-1 win against Fraser River GM, and Serenity crushed Blue Collar 10-6.
Do you read that Forestry League article that's
put in there? No, I can't say I did.
It's unreal. Some of the nicknames he's got for the guys that play are just
I've heard of that. Allison's talked about that.
Yeah, they're hilarious. You got to read it. They are good fun.
Awesome.
From the field, the United Way has increasingly active role in Quesnel. Lori Kudus of Prince George United Way recently brought a special event to our city. She says, there is no better way to understand Quesnel than through a Seeing is Believing tour. These powerful visits allowed participants to experience a side of our community they might not otherwise see. Tours are intended to provide insight and perspective so you can see firsthand the work that United Way's funded agencies do to make change happen in Quesnel. On November the 6th, there was an event held at the Métis Association on Doherty. 4 groups came to enjoy their successes. Besides the Métis Association, there was Big Brothers and Sisters, Quesnel Lifeline, and the North Cariboo Aboriginal Family Program Society also participated. After the sharing, Lori announced a new program coming to Quesnel. It's called Better at Home. It will see help given to seniors who need non-medical assistance in their homes. This is good stuff because it's tying into another group that is looking for the same sort of thing, which is that senior Voice for Seniors.
Mm-hmm. Well, last week we brought you the first installment of a series with Dave Brown from Barkerville on the meaning of gold. Today we bring you part 2. Dave will discuss with Bert deVink how that precious metal impacted the history of the Cariboo. Here's Bert with Dave Brown.
My name is Bert deVink. Hello, Mitch and Ron. And we have with us Dave again.
Yep.
As we introduced in the last time we had a talk about gold here, it's going to be part 2. And I would say, Dave, go for it.
Okay, yeah. You know, last time we talked about the origins of gold, how it behaves in nature. Now we're going to talk about how gold affects people. And, you know, it's kind of interesting that Gold was first discovered here in mainland British Columbia. It was first discovered on the Queen Charlotte's, but the first strike on mainland British Columbia, or known gold discovery, was in the area of Fort Kamloops.
Was it
And
there?
there was a, yeah, it was a fur trading post there run by Mr. Donald McLean. And he ran a fur trading post, regular trade with the natives, trade goods in returns for furs. And one day a native came in with some shiny pebbles, wondering if they're worth anything in trade. It looked like gold to Mr. McLean, but he wasn't sure. So he took that gold sample, sent it in a letter to his boss, chief factor of the Hudson's Bay Company, James Douglas in Victoria.
Right.
And in this letter asked 2 questions. Question number 1, is this sample I'm giving you gold? Question number 2, what's the policy on trading gold with the natives? Well, as you can imagine, a very swift reply was sent back stating, yes, this is gold.
Yeah.
Gather up a large party of natives, go out and get as much of it as you possibly can. But whatever you do, keep it under your hat. Because the last thing we need is 30,000 half-crazed California miners swarming up into this area, disrupting our lucrative fur trade with the natives. Well, for 5 years, remarkably, for 5 long years, they kept it under their hat. They did trade with the natives in gold in secret. But, you know, it wasn't easy to keep that secret because James Douglas had 800 ounces of raw placer gold piling up in Victoria. And it didn't belong to him.
No.
It belonged to the shareholders of the Hudson's Bay Company all the way back in England. So a gold shipment was made. Word spread like a wildfire down the west coast of the United States all the way to California. And, you know, in the year of 1857, 58, things are on a decline in California. If you're a gold miner in California, you might not have enough gold to buy your next plate of beans. And let's say you're a gold miner down in California, Bert, and you hear about gold on Fraser's River.
I go.
Where are you going?
Yeah,
Fraser's River.
I would.
But, you know, and a gold rush, it's an amazing event. 1,700 men left San Francisco in the space of an hour and a half. The first boatload of men instantly doubled the population of Fort Victoria, 400 men. And there was a boat after that, and a boat after that, and a boat after that. Fort Victoria was instantly transformed into a tent city and commercial center. Now, the first order of business is getting from Fort Victoria to Hope and Yale on the Fraser's River, where the sandbars are. Now, Bert, you've taken a ride on BC ferries, right?
Yeah.
How'd you like to try that same trip on a homemade boat?
I wouldn't mind that.
You'd give it a try. You're nuts. but no, you know, I'll tell you, the sight of drowned miners in the salt chuck, lower reaches of the Fraser's River was not an uncommon sight. There were seagulls feeding on their raw, purulent, bloated corpse. Sorry, I got a little carried away. But at any rate, those that are lucky enough to get from Fort Victoria to Hope and Yale, where the sandbars are, what do you suppose they found when they got there?
Probably gold.
They found gold, but they also found several hundred native miners already mining that gold for the Hudson's Bay Company. Now, those native miners, they did not formally stake a claim. They didn't hold a mining license, but they felt, and rightfully so, through right of occupation, the gold is theirs. Armed conflicts between whites and natives ensued during this time period. It's not a particularly pretty time of British Columbia's past. But, you know, things were very difficult for the first wave of miners. There's altercations with the natives. There was supplies were unavailable at any price. There was no infrastructure in place to feed 30,000 men.
I guess not, eh?
And then there was the Fraser River itself. When they entered the river in, let's say, May, when they entered the river in March, the river was low. It was navigable. Like the sandbars were exposed. But come June, July, the river's a raging torrent. The sandbars are flooded, and you take your life in your hands trying to put a boat into the Fraser River. You know, men were left starving to death walking out of the Fraser River Canyon. Of the 30,000 men who swarmed into that harsh new land in the first year of 1858, only 3,000, 1 in 10, stuck it out for the second season of mining. And by the year of 1859, Things had settled down a bit with the natives. The trails had been improved, access had been improved, and in that second year, miners made all the way up to Fort Alexandria, just 60 miles south of us here. And there were 4 very significant miners at this time. There was Doc Heathley, John Rose, Ben McDonald, and George Weaver. And they were all veterans of the California Rush.
Yeah,
they knew how the game was played. You get there first, you're a winner. You're a few days behind, you're out of the money. They got to Fort Alexandria first. They questioned the fur trader there about the whereabouts of the gold. Now, he was a good HBC man. He told them nothing. But when they questioned the fur trader's daughter, Ben McDonald found out there was gold on the Quesnel River. And that's where they went, the Quesnel River. And I've taken pans out of the Quesnel River. It can stop your heart. Now, this gold just shows up like a bright line of gold paint across the top of the black sand. But it's like that gold leaf. It's like this stuff here. It just dances around in your pan. It's very difficult to separate from the black sand, and it takes an awful lot of that, gold pounded out flake to add up to an ounce. But they correctly reasoned that if there's fine flour gold at the mouth of the Quesnel River, where are the big nuggets? Further upstream. And that's what they did. They prospected further upstream on the Quesnel River, prospecting all the tributaries, looking for the source of that gold. And they got to Quesnel Forks. And you've been to Quesnel Forks.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful spot.
Yeah.
It's a broad alluvial plain, low elevation, good spot to spend the winter.
Oh, yeah.
And they were finding somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 per man per day.
That was a lot of money in those days, wasn't it, Dave?
Well, you figure out that, it's about 2/3 of an ounce of gold, and that translates to $1,100 or $1,200 a day per man in our money today. Pretty good wages.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, well, 400 other men thought it was good wages too, and they followed their trail all the way up to Quesnel Forks. Town of Quesnel Forks was born overnight. Now, Doc Heathley, he was a pretty clever guy. And I think in our next episode, that's when we'll get on to the exploits of Doc Heathley and Keithley Creek.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Dave.
You bet, yeah.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned a lot of that stuff because, as you know, I was in charge of this place in Barkerville, and I had to deal with the surface of it, but not to the depth you've been researching gold. Yeah. Again, thanks a lot, Dave. Really interesting. Fantastic.
Okay, see you next time, Bert.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for Sutton Shutters. Dave took some photos last weekend of cricket practice at the indoor soccer fields, and he also had a chance to check out the Christmas Bazaar that was held at the Senior Center. Once again, thank you, Dave, for sending in those photos.
Now let's take a look at what's happening in Quesnel with our community calendar.
Before we close, we have a little news from our sponsor, the Lions Club. Be sure to get your ticket for a chance for a shopping spree at 5 minutes at Save On Foods, my wife's favorite store. Tickets are $5 and are available at Save On Foods and at K-Max. The draw will take place on December 8th, and the shopping spree at Save On Foods will be December the 18th. December also will see some garage sales coming up, one on the 8th, I should say, the 15th, and both are at Maple Park Mall. Well, Mitch, I fumbled through that all right, didn't I?
You did awesome. That's great. Coming up in our future QToday shows, Bert will be talking with Peter Nielsen in our Senior Speak Out segment. We'll have some great career leap information for you and what should be an interesting debate on the legalization of marijuana.
Guess who's going to be in on that debate? Yours truly.
All right.
As we leave you today, we have another song from Christine Allen for you to enjoy.
Well, that's it for this show. Thanks for listening to us today. We do want to hear from you with your story ideas, which we can air on our program. We also want to hear about your comments about this show, and we want to know how we're doing.
Remember,
Quesnel, QToday is Quesnel.
Talking to Quesnel.
Thank you.